Namaste. Thank you for joining in. It has been a couple of weeks since we did not do the live classes because of some issues that I was facing. So the last two classes of Kala Sarpa were recorded ones. In the first class, in the first of the recorded classes, we had covered Rahu in the fourth and Ketu in the 10th. Okay, and then in the next recorded class, we covered Rahu in the fifth house. Okay. So today we'll be looking at Ketu in the 11th house. And before we begin, let's start with the Shanti mantra that we usually do. Okay. Om Sahana Bhavatu, Sahana Bhunakatu, Sahaviryankara Vavahai, Tejasvinadadhitamastu Mavida Vishavahai. Om Shanti 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 Hi. Okay. So Ketu in the 11th house, and the 11th house, we know it rules the calf muscles. Okay, so because Ketu represents some kind of weakness, so the native may have some kind of weakness there. Okay, why? Because Ketu tends to break things. All right. For example, the weaknesses may show up in the form of some kind of tendency to pull a hamstring, or maybe to develop varicose veins. Okay. And in the family sphere, the 11th house, it rules elder siblings, paternal aunts and uncles. Okay. It also rules stepchildren, of a subsequent spouse. And it also rules partners of one's own children. Okay. So because Ketu is ambivalent or Ketu is apathetic, the native may have awkward problems or even problematic relationships with these people. All right. And if the native has older siblings, then those people, they may be aloof, distant, eccentric, odd, removed, or uncommitted. And such behavior, it provides early life evidence that the native has to stand on his or her own. Okay. And since Ketu also represents broken promises, so an elder sibling may fail to deliver on what was promised. Okay. And such a thing, such failure may destroy the native's faith. Okay. Similarly, paternal aunts and uncles, which are also represented by the 11th house, they may be equally unreliable for the native. All right. And the native with Ketu in the 11th has weak psychic boundaries, and he or she often feels that getting drawn into others' issues often leads to disappointment. Okay. Yeah. Dhanu, just hold on. There is an important call here. I'll just be back. Okay, really sorry, guys. There was this call from Guruji. Yeah. So as I said, paternal aunts and uncles of such a native may be equally unreliable. Okay. And a native who has Ketu in the 11th has weak psychic boundaries. Okay. And such a native feels that getting drawn into others' issues often leads to disappointment. Okay. Because the 11th house rules friend circles, right? So in friendship, these people, they see weaknesses rather than strengths. So, they think that it's safe not to cultivate friends. Okay. And rather, these people are more likely to disparage friends or even deny, access to his friends from their life, to their friends from their life. All right. And social networks can be entirely absent. These people, they may be habitual loners. And if the social networks are not entirely absent, they may be limited to those few who meet the approval of such natives. Okay. And why does this happen? Because Ketu also represents fear. So the hidden fear is that, friends will abandon him or abandon her. All right. And, a fear often has a root associated with it. And this fear may have roots in the family. Okay. For example, the native might have been abandoned by an older sibling who should have maybe protected him or her. And consequently, such a native prefers to keep things superficial, risking nothing in social relationships. or avoiding reliance on anyone whose support may be withdrawn. Okay. Similarly, such a native sees little purpose in associations and clubs that unite people in shared purpose. Okay, so these are not the kind of people who would go or to hang out with his friends, or maybe to clubs and pubs and so on. All right, they usually prefer a very solitary path, and they are unattached to any kind of community. Okay, and why does this happen? Because there is an underlying belief that such programs are ineffectual. Okay, in worst case scenario, this placement of Ketu in the 11th house can turn someone into a nihilist who finds nothing worthy in social movements. Okay, whether economic or political or spiritual. And as a result, these people usually have no desire to join a common cause for a larger good. Okay, so it's a good placement for detachment. Okay, for example, these natives, they may get along with everyone, but they may not emotionally invest into whoever they get along with. All right, so it's like a performer on stage who is working with a crowd, like any performer or politician, putting on a show, shaking hands with everyone, but it's a one-way valve. Okay, because the stage performer connects with the audience, but the audience cannot reciprocate. Okay, so Ketu in the 11th, it represents a sea of undifferentiated faces at a at a comfortable distance, reflecting the mood of the moment, but offering nothing by way of personal connection. Okay, so when the show is over, the performer simply slips out of the back door to go home. So similarly, natives with 11th house Ketu, they may be connected with everyone, but emotionally invested in none. Okay, so it's a good thing to do. It's a good thing to have, in my opinion. Okay. Now, if someone has Ketu in the 11th house, such a native is ambivalent about economic gains, friends, and social networks. So I don't mean that, he'll not enjoy gains, or he'll not want gains, or he'll not want friends, or he would not want a social network. Okay. It's just that the attachment might not be there. Okay. Or maybe such people will have very little desire to cultivate them. Okay. And with respect to income, Ketu is boundless. Okay. So there is no restriction to the native's earning ability. Some astrologers predict that Ketu in the 11th will restrain your earnings. No, Ketu is ambivalent. He does not like boundaries. So without boundaries, there is no limitation to what income the native can achieve. Okay. But then we also have to understand that Ketu is scattered. Okay. So the income is either irregular or it is subject to dispersal. Okay. So some contractors, they may, in India, it happens especially, some contractors, they may take up, contract work, or, based on the tendering process. And then, the work is completed, but they are still waiting for the payment. So Ketu in the 11th represents such kind of work. Okay. So it can also indicate contractual, as I said, or seasonal work fluctuating over time and circumstances. And sometimes the native may be financially compromised by siblings, friends, or group investors. But then these are not the ones who would worry about their income level. Okay, so they know that money will come from somewhere, and eventually money does land up from somewhere. Okay, so it's actually a good combination to have with regards to money. Okay, no matter whatever says, no matter whatever others might say, in my opinion, Ketu is actually good in the 11th house when it comes to income. Okay, now Ketu in the 11th, it means Rahu in the 5th. Okay, so in a spiritual context, this native who has Rahu in the 5th, they may desire the siddhis that come from spiritual grace. Okay, but although they want the siddhis, they will not have the appetite for devotional practice. For example, focus on mantra or tantra, or even reading the shastras or the religious books. So the 11th house, also, since it also represents network circles, so it is also reflective of sangha. Okay, what is sangha? Sangha is the monastic order or the community of devotees. So Ketu in the 11th, it reflects the sangha wherein such practice is supported. But because of Rahu in the 5th, and because Rahu in the 5th directly looks at Ketu in the 11th, the native is usually ambivalent about the value of such membership. Okay, How many times have you taken up the membership of a gym only not to go there later on? How many of you have taken up the membership of a club only to realize that, I would have been better off if I did not take that membership? So that is actually the way of Ketu in the, in the 11th. Okay. So just give me a couple of minutes. We'll be looking into a few charts to support whatever we have studied. Okay. Just give me a couple of minutes. Okay. So let's look at a few example charts. Share the screen. Yeah. Okay. All right. So this is Rubin Carter. Okay. And when it comes to Ketu, I actually love taking the charts of people who are, who are either mentally demented or, they are great in spirituality. Okay. So Rubin Carter, I hope everyone can see this. Yeah. I actually got the charts from Astro database. Okay. Just hold on. All right. So Rubin Carter, he died on the 20th of April 2014, and he was a middleweight boxer who was wrongfully convicted of murder and was later released, following a petition of habeas corpus after spending almost 20 years in prison. So he was a kind of a fanatic. All right. When he was 11, he stabbed a man and was sent to reform school. And then he escaped and joined the army, where he began to box. Okay. But after four courts martial basically, he was discharged as unfit for service. And then he was subsequently convicted of murdering two more people, and he was sent to prison. Okay. And once he was freed, he began to box professionally. His aggressive style and punching power helped him score many early round knockouts and made him a crowd favorite. All right. Earning him the, reputation, or maybe the nickname, of Hurricane. Okay. And he had an impressive boxing record. Out of 40 fights, he won 19 fights via knockout. And, his record included 27 wins and 12 losses, only one draw. Okay. I think Shannon would be familiar with this guy. So, in 1966, the police arrested Carter and a friend for triple homicide shotgun killing in a New Jersey bar. And upon, yeah, upon searching Carter's car, police found ammunition that fit the murder weapon but took no fingerprints at the crime scene and lacked facilities to test the suspects for gunshot residue. Okay. Later on, Carter and his friend were convicted in 1967. And while in prison, Carter wrote an autobiography, The 16th Round, published in 1975. And since he had maintained his innocence throughout and the evidence was so circumstantial, supporters, including Muhammad Ali, campaigned for a retrial, but he was convicted again in 1976. So the attorneys of Carter, they appealed once more in 1979, accusing the prosecution of racism and concealment of evidence. And after the second conviction was overturned in 1985, the prosecutors declined to try the case for a third time. Okay. And, we know about the film called The Hurricane, starring Denzel Washington, that came out, I think, in 1999. And later on, Carter immigrated to Canada, where he became a motivational speaker and executive director of the Association in Defense of the Wrongly Convicted. Okay. And he died reportedly of prostate cancer in 2014. All right. Now look at the charts. Okay. Just look at the charts. You can see, Mars occupying the same sign as Rahu, but it lies outside the degree of the nodal axis. Okay. So this is a potential Kala Sarpa. But anyways, Mars and Rahu together, it indicates a lot of violence. Okay. And, it is in the Viloma pattern. with all the remaining planets moving towards Ketu. So, it is the initial point of analysis. So with Mars on the nodal axis and Saturn aspecting Ketu, it creates a dosha. Okay. And, despite the aspect of Jupiter on Ketu, this aspect is pretty much weak. So the dosha is more prominent. Carter was born into, Jupiter Mahadasha, Venus Antardasha. And you look at Jupiter, which is debilitated in the 7th house, but it forms a Parivartan Yoga with Saturn in the 9th. Venus is exalted and retrograde, but it forms no yoga with Saturn. Okay. And the association of Mars with Rahu, it creates a complex dynamic. All right. You see, Mars is being very strong. It is both retrograde as well as it is in its own sign. So it becomes 3 times stronger as compared to a normal Mars. And since the Lagna is Cancer, Mars becomes the Yoga Karaka. Okay, so it has a very definite role as the Lord of a Kendra in association with Rahu in the 5th. And this is the reason, that a Raj Yoga is forming. Okay, now this Raj Yoga is offering a great potential to the Kala Sarpa, but it is of mixed nature. It is good because of the Raj Yoga, but it is problematic because of the dosha that is created by Mars. Okay, now Ketu is debilitated and it receives no relief from Venus, the Moon, or Mars. Okay, these are the 3 planets that could facilitate Nichabhanga Raj Yoga. Okay, and both Ketu and the sign lord Venus is under the influence of Saturn. And what is Saturn? Saturn is the planet of bondage. Okay, and in fact, Saturn influence is very pervasive in this chart. And you look at Saturn, it has an effect on every other planet in the chart except Rahu, whose nature is Saturn-like anyway. Okay, Saturn is also disposing the Moon and Jupiter by sign and Mars by nakshatra. And in cooperation with Ketu, it actually boosts up Sun and Mercury. And if you look at the D3 chart, I've not included the D3 chart. The Lagna and the Rashi dispositors of the nodes, that means, Mars and Venus, they are all in Sarpa Trikana. Sarpa Trikana, it always, or most of the times, it indicates imprisonment. Okay. And there is a shloka from the Brihat Parashara Hora Shastra, page number 515. It's Parashara says, and I quote, if in a horoscope there is a Pasha Yoga and, the ascendant lord is in the second Drikana of Scorpio, in the 6th or the 8th house, can send the native to prison. Okay, it's a form of jail yoga. And what is Pasha Yoga? Pasha Yoga is a condition where all the Navagrahas, except the nodes, they occupy just 5 signs. Okay, so the Lagnesh moon is in the 8th house, but although it says Lagna, rather than Lagnesh in a Scorpio decanate, Carter's chart approximates, the principle stated in Parashara, and he did went to jail, as we saw. Okay, so this chart has multiple exaggerated planets. So Kala Sarpa has the power to amplify all of them. The exalted sun, the dark moon. It's a dark moon, okay, because it's just less than 5 tithis from the sun, from Amavasya. The retrograde Mars and Mercury, debilitated Jupiter, and Venus, which is both exalted and retrograde. So if you study his life carefully, most of the key events in Carter's life occurred in periods of exaggerated planets. The nodes or the other planets influencing them by association or aspect or disposition. And in Saturn Dasha, from the age of 5 to 24, it saw Carter get into trouble and be incarcerated for it. Okay. In Saturn Ketu at the age of 11, he stabbed a man and he was sent to a reform school. In Saturn Moon at the age of 17, he escaped reform school and joined the army. In Saturn Mars at the age of 18, he competed for boxing in the, he competed in boxing for the US Army. And during Saturn Rahu at the age of 19, he received a dishonorable discharge from the army because, he was court-martialed. And thereafter, he committed 2 muggings and was sent to prison. That means he killed 2 people there. Mercury Dasha, between the age of 24 to 41, it saw him rise in his boxing career, but then he fell victim to some kind of erroneous justice. And during Mercury, at the age of 24 to 27, he began boxing professionally. All right. In Mercury Mahadasha, Venus Antardasha, at the age of 29, he was arrested for murder. He was then tried the next year, and he was finally convicted. Okay. And in Mercury Saturn, at the age of 40, he was tried again on appeal, and he was once again convicted. Okay. During Ketu Dasha, from the age 41 to 48, he remained in prison. And Venus Dasha, between the age of 48 to 68, it brought his freedom. Okay. In Venus, his second conviction was overturned on appeal, and he became a free man again. And in Venus Rahu, he moved to Canada, where he became a motivational speaker and director of an association in defense of the wrongly convicted. During his Sun Dasha, from the age of 68 to 74, he continued to campaign for other victims of a flawed justice system. Okay. He died in Moon Rahu, and he died just a month short of his 77th birthday. Okay. So it's a difficult chart, but you look at all the amplifications that Kala Sarpa is doing to this chart. All right. Let's look at another one. So this is Elizabeth Clare Prophet. Okay, another very popular spiritual figure in the West. Again, Shannon must be familiar with this person as well. Okay. So she was an American spiritual leader, author, as well as an orator and writer. And okay. From an early age, she began having blackouts and mystical experiences in which she claimed to have recalled previous incarnations. Her mother subsequently introduced her to Christian Science and Theosophy. And after graduating from university with a degree in political science, she met her future husband, Mark Prophet, who accepted her as a student in his mystical school, the Summit Lighthouse. Okay, Summit Lighthouse actually belonged to the Theosophians. Okay, they were the same people who were associated with the Theosophical Society of India. The same, school of thought, which also produced a brilliant orator in the 1970s. His name was Jiddu Krishnamurti. Okay, you must have heard about Krishnamurti, right? He was a contemporary of Osho. And when her husband died, 12 years later, she inherited a sprawling spiritual empire, which was worth over $50 million at that time. She first moved to California, and she continued to grow her, her church, universal and triumphant. Okay. And then later on, relocated herself to a 12,000-acre ranch in Montana. And that church, it soon became a cult-like organization, with devotees signing away their property and submitting to a strict regimen controlling their diet, their sex life, and work schedules. And Elizabeth Prophet, meanwhile, she lived in luxury, dressing like a queen and being treated like a goddess. And she married twice more, and at one point had to settle out of court a $23 million lawsuit by her third husband, who alleged her church enforced slavery amongst its followers. Okay. And she was supposedly, she could actually converse with the archangels. All right. And she once declared that she had a conversation with Archangel Gabriel and other spiritual entities, and she became convinced that the Russians would soon wage some kind of a nuclear war. So she embarked on building bomb shelters for her congregation and followers. Okay. And when stored diesel fuel polluted a nearby river, local authorities forced her to halt the construction. Okay. And she promoted her search vigorously on various TV talk shows. But then she developed Alzheimer soon after, and she lost control of the organization, and eventually she died at the age of 70. Okay. So look at the chart. No planet occupies the sign of the nodes, and the planets are distributed among the 5 intervening signs. and only one of the signs are vacant. So it indicates a class of potent Kala Sarpa. Okay, it's a Viloma type because all the planets are trying to move towards Ketu. So it makes the initial point of analysis. Okay, Jupiter's aspect on Rahu, it it weakens the Kala Sarpa. All right. Now, Elizabeth Prophet, she was born into Mercury Dasha, Venus Antar Dasha, and Mercury is in mixed condition, debilitated, but it is retrograde in the 10th house. And as a dual Kendra Lord, it forms a pair of Raj Yoga Yogyas with the 9th Lord Saturn. Okay. And Mercury is the most heavily afflicted planet in the chart, associating with the, with the Sun and Saturn and aspected by Mars. And you look at Saturn and Mars, they are both Dushtana lords. Okay. And this in part may explain her childhood, traumatic experiences or blackouts. And sometimes her, delusional worldviews. And eventually, Alzheimer's in her later years. Okay. Now Venus is, it is dispositing Rahu both by sign. Okay, it is not both by sign. It is, it is this Rahu's dispositor by sign and Ketu's nakshatra dispositor. Okay, so although ordinary in the 9th as 5th lord, it forms 2 Raj Yogas with dual, Kendra Lord Jupiter. And both Mercury and Venus are associated with the Parivartan Yoga between Jupiter and Saturn. And this facilitates some kind of spiritual studies and ministry. Now, you must note that Jupiter is her Sukshma Lagna Lord in its own nakshatra. Okay, so if the Lagna Lord goes into its own nakshatra, it's a condition that, it's almost like having the Lagnesh in the Lagna. Okay. And as the Karaka for, spirituality, Jupiter bestowed a certain guru-like status upon her. And both nodes are powerful for separate reasons. Rahu is in its own nakshatra, while Ketu is in its own, own Rashi in Aries. Okay. Some authors consider Ketu, Ketu as the owner of Aries, as the co-owner of Aries. And we anyways know that Ketu is like Mars, okay, because it shares its attributes with Mars. And Ketu's dispositor and 11th Lord Mars is giving a special, special mutual aspect with the 9th Lord Saturn. And this forms a Dhana Yoga. Okay. Now, Kala Sarpa, as I said, it amplifies the effects of exaggerated planets, and it is not different. There is no difference in case of her. You look, the moon is debilitated, but Mercury is both debilitated and retrograde. Okay, so as a result, both these planets, they play a role in disturbing the mind. And since Mercury is the 4th lord, afflicted by Saturn, and the moon, okay, the moon, which is the Karaka for the emotional mind, is both debilitated and poorly placed in the 6th house, which we know is the Dusthana. Okay. Now, am I being clear?
Yeah, we hear you now.
Okay, so from where did we miss?
You said Mercury being in the Dastana.
Okay, Mercury
Like
being
that's the
yeah, yeah,
last
yeah,
I
yeah,
heard
yeah.
you say.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. So you look at the sun, the moon, and Saturn. They are all occupying Mercury nakshatras. So it means that, for all these antardashas, these planets will invoke the effect of their nakshatra lord Mercury. And Mercury, as we know, it is the most exaggerated yet, afflicted planet in the horoscope. And Most of the pivotal events in Elizabeth Prophet's life occurred in the periods of the nodes, you know, in the periods of the planets which are linked to the nodes, and also the planets in exaggerated condition. So Mercury Dasha, from the time of birth till the age of 11, it was a period of mystical experience and spiritual awakening in which she recalled previous incarnations. Ketu Dasha, Ketu Dasha at the age of 11 to 18. During this time, she studied Christian science and theosophy. Venus Dasha, at the age of 18 to 38, she attended university and studied political science. And during Venus Mahadasha, Venus Antardasha, from the age of 18 to 21, she worked for the Christian Science Monitor. Okay. In Venus Dasha Mars Antardasha, at the age of 24, she married Mark Prophet. In Venus Saturn period, at the age of 34, her husband died and she inherited control of his mystical school, the Summit Lighthouse. In Venus Mercury, at the age of 36, she founded the Church Universal and Triumphant. During Sun Dasha, from the age of 38 to 44, she managed the growth of the church, and its worth exceeded, more than $50 million. And her problems started during the Dasha of the Moon between the age of 44 to 54, which was actually a period of delusional thinking and community relationship problems. And in the late 1980s, Prophet warned her followers that nuclear war was imminent, and the community started building bomb shelters, but was forced by some court order to halt construction. When stored diesel fuel leaked into a local river and polluted it. Okay. During Mars Dasha, from the age 54 to 61, Prophet conducted a public relations campaign on Larry King Live and other TV programs to promote her church. Okay. And in Mars Venus period, at the age of 59, her second Saturn return, she was diagnosed with Alzheimer's. Okay. In Rahu Dasha, age 61 to her death, she relinquished control of the church but continued channeling the ascended masters with, she said that she could receive messages from Jesus or Confucius or Buddha or Shakespeare, even Christopher Columbus, and even Merlin the magician. Okay. And she died, during Rahu Mercury at the age of 70. Okay. So this is it regarding the charts. If you have any doubts, you are more than welcome to ask me. Okay, so I don't think we have doubts. Anyways, so we have completed the the video series on learning the Lagna. From this Friday, we will be starting a series on the Sri Suktam. Okay, Sri Suktam is a tantric method. Okay, it's a Vedic chant, but it can be used in an alternative way to generate internal or inner and external or outer prosperity. Okay, so I'll be teaching this for free, and this will be my first, without the guidance of Guru. Yeah. You'll be able to do it. Okay, you don't have to worry. So I'll be teaching this for free. At least the theory parts, I'll be teaching this for free. And after we complete the theory part, there would be, a practical guidance on how to recite the Sri Suktam. But I'll teach you the recitations as well. I'll give an explanation of the entire Sri Suktam, verse by verse, and what it actually means, because people just recite the Sri Suktam like monkeys or like parrots, and then they wonder why nothing happened. Okay, so this is something that you can all use for your building your inner prosperity. And once you learn reciting the Sri Suktam, I'll teach you a very esoteric process which many people don't know, but that is not going to be free. Okay, that would be a that would be a paid course, not a course, but it will be a paid continuation. And I will complete the entire stuff in around 15 to 20 weeks. Even if you join the free classes, you'd be at least learning what the Sri Suktam means. Okay, even if you don't come for the paid classes, but I would suggest that you enroll for the entire course. There is no enrollment procedure. The classes will start from this Friday, and you can join in live, or you can watch the recordings. The recordings will always be there on YouTube. But the last classes, those recordings will be private. It will be privatized basically. That's a long way away, long time away. We'll be in for 20 weeks. It's going to be a grueling session every Friday. Okay, so I hope to see all of you there. Sri Suktam, this is your opportunity to invite Devi Lakshmi into your lives. Okay, all right then. Thank you so much for joining in. I'll see you on Friday with the Sri Suktam and everything. Does the paid course fall under mines, or is it something different? I did not get your question, Shannon. Fall under
Like I'm
mines.
doing the tantra thing, and you said it's part of it, right?
Oh yeah. You can join. That is not a problem. That is not a problem. Okay. I
Okay.
don't, because at the end of the day, see, I don't teach via a syllabus. Okay, whatever I have taught you, I've
Uh-huh.
tried to make it as less structured as possible. Okay, because syllabus is only for schools, and this is not school. This is meant to be this is meant to be coaching. Okay, so you
Okay.
cannot do anything via a syllabus. Of course, people get angry when I say that I don't have a syllabus. The Satyam Shivam Sundaram program. I don't have a syllabus, but I've written down something at least for people to understand. But I know I'll not be following the syllabus because I don't do anything. It just gets done through me by the Divine Mother.
Okay.
So what I do know is, the verses will follow that pattern, whichever pattern it is there in the Vedas. And this is your opportunity to enroll or to learn a Vedic verse with a proper swara. Okay, with a proper swara.
Okay.
And
Thank
let's
you.
see. Okay, let's see what we can make out of the paid classes. Okay,
Okay.
yeah.
Mhm.
All right, then. Thank you so much for joining in. And I will see you on Friday, hopefully, all of you for the Sri Suktam classes. Thank you so much.